5:30 and a quorum is present, so I will call this meeting of the Madison Plan Commission of August 26 to order. First, we will hear from our technical facilitator, Jesse.
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do the best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After all register and speak, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email list in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. First, communications disclosures and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Are there any disclosures or recusals? Seeing no raised hands. Next is public comment, and I don't see anything that is public comment other than a general email that was sent in. Megan.
Yes, Chair. We have one registrant that signed up to speak during the public comment.
Okay.
Linda Leonards.
Okay. Linda? Well, first, I want to introduce Megan. Megan Tuttle is our new Plan Department Director, taking over what Heather Stouter did. And I want to thank staff who filled in during the gap between Heather and Megan taking over. So Megan, welcome. Glad you are here.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's really great to be here, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. So, Linda Leonards. Linda, you will have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm here to talk about conditional use approvals. Recently, a staff report said a conditional use is presumed approvable unless substantial evidence is presented. That isn't quite accurate. As ACA John Strange told the council in 2020, quote, "The city cannot approve a conditional use merely because the applicant requests one," unquote. The applicant must demonstrate that all approval standards and conditions established by the city are or will be satisfied. This demonstration must be supported by substantial evidence. An applicant cannot just say, for example, that a new building is compatible with the existing or intended character of an area. This would be personal preference. If there is not substantial evidence that the standards and conditions will be satisfied, Plan Commission cannot approve the CU request. If there is substantial evidence, then Plan Commission can approve subject to public comment. The public comment can provide substantial evidence that a standard or condition is not satisfied or will not be satisfied. Assuming there is public comment providing such evidence, the Plan Commission needs to weigh that evidence. Plan Commission has discretion to decide how much weight to give to any piece of evidence, and courts do not reweigh the evidence. So, yes, a CU is presumed approvable, but only if the applicant provides substantial evidence as to the meeting of the standards, and there's no contrary evidence provided. With one caveat, the Plan Commission is entitled to make a decision that a particular CU is not appropriate on a particular site. If anything, Plan Commission's job became more involved after Act 67, since it needs to ensure substantial evidence is provided. For example, do staff reports that just give general conclusions count as substantial evidence? Can staff reports substitute for the applicant providing substantial evidence? Is using the consent agenda for CU approval still okay, or does the consent agenda essentially delegate to staff the decision which Plan Commission is required to make based on substantial evidence?
Linda, you have
I
one
urge you to
minute
look at.
You have 1 minute remaining, Linda.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I urge you to look at the Edgewood Credit Union, the Edgewood conditional use request and appeal. That matter was decided after Act 67 and survived a court challenge. It provides a good case study of the process. And I will be shortly sending you out a comment letter that provides more details on this issue. But my main point is there is not a presumption. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Are there any questions for Linda? Seeing no raised hands, we will move on. Next on the agenda are approval of the minutes of the July 11th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Alder Ugair, seconded by Commissioner Solheim. I will assume unanimous consent unless there is a raised hand to object. Alder Duncan, did you wish to object, or were you trying to second?
I was not at the July 11th meeting, so I just wanted to not vote on this one.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Alderfield, did you want to say anything? Yes, go ahead, please.
I'd like to abstain as well for the same reason. I wasn't at that meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With 2 abstentions, I will assume unanimous consent unless there's another raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously with the 2 abstentions. Schedule of upcoming meetings. We do have also the minutes of the July 29th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections for July 29th? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Alder Duncan, seconded by Commissioner Solheim. And again, I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Schedule of upcoming meetings. There are regular meetings on September 9th and 23rd, and then on October 7th and October 21st. Okay, next on the agenda, I will go through the consent agenda. It is the custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which staff believes an application has had sufficient review to warrant approval with all of the conditions placed upon it by the various city departments, on which the applicant accepts those conditions, and there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to the item. Those items are placed on the consent agenda along with any referrals, and they are addressed at the beginning of our meeting. I will read the agenda items into the record. Agenda item 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then for referral, agenda item 11 and 12 at the applicant's request referred to an indeterminate date, and that will depend on when it goes to the Urban Design Commission. And then also for referral, agenda item 13 and 14. Are there any requests for separation of any of those agenda items? Seeing no, Alder Rummel.
Hi, everyone. I would just like more clarification about the referral of number 12 back to urban design.
We had a request of the applicant to refer because they desire to go back to the Urban Design Commission. I don't know anything more than that. Megan, do you, or does any other staff? Colin Punt. Colin?
Yes, thank you. So we did receive a request for the referral of the conditional use back to Urban Design Commission. This particular proposal was at Urban Design Commission last in January. The applicant had decided to continue to this Plan Commission meeting with the recommendation from UDC at that time. I think they have decided that they need to address a few more of the design modifications and have requested the opportunity to go back to UDC and do so. There's no date set to that, but if assuming it gets any sort of recommendation from Urban Design Commission, it would come to the next Plan Commission meeting after that.
And Colin, if you could remind the Plan Commission, some of the statements of urban design were very similar to the staff report about failing to meet condition number 8, I believe.
Yes, there were, for those commissioners that have reviewed the staff report for items 11 and 12, there were a number of issues and concerns raised regarding standard of approval 8 that were also raised by the Urban Design Commission. And so the applicant has decided, rather than do the public hearing this evening, to address some of those issues and come back with a revised application.
Thank you, Colin. Anything else, Alder Rummel?
And I will hold my editorial comments other than to say I'm not sure what advantage it is if they're not willing to significantly alter the building, which is quite limited in its space. But that's up to them, I suppose, and your willingness to let them do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alder. Okay, seeing no other raised hands, so no requests for separation, I will read each item for referral into the record. First is Agenda Item 2, Legistar 84612, authorizing the city's execution of a maintenance agreement with Commonwealth Development Incorporated for the use of East Main Street right-of-way with 2 existing patios and associated patio improvements to support 2 outdoor cafes adjacent to the property located at 931 East Main Street, as well as the city's acceptance of ownership of said improvements in exchange for the perpetual maintenance of them by Commonwealth Development in Alder District 6. Agenda Item 4, Legistar 84329, amending sections of the Madison General Ordinance to change minimum dimensional requirements in their traditional residential consistent 4 district. Agenda Item 5, Legistar 84626, amending sections of the Madison General Ordinances related to downtown height requirements to allow affordable student housing to exceed the maximum number of stories, Alder Districts 2, 4, and 6. Agenda Item 6, Legistar 83951, located at 2928 Barlow Street, Alder District 5, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a single-family residence. Agenda Item 7, Legistar 84445, located at 301 and 303 Potter Street, Alder District 13, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a single-family residence. Agenda item 8, Legistar 84446, located at 3533 Lucia Crest, Alder District 5, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a single-family residence. Agenda item 9, Legistar 84448, located at 5209 Femwright Drive, Alder District 16. Consideration of a conditional use in the industrial limited district to allow an animal boarding tenant in an existing multi-tenant building located at 5201 through 5265 Femwright. Agenda item 10, Legistar 84605, creating sections of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 204 Price Place from suburban employment district to traditional residential urban 2 district in Alder District 11. And just to point out that agenda items 11 and 12 are related, and at the applicant's request, they will be referred to an indeterminate date, depending on their hearing at the Urban Design Commission. And also for referral, and also related, agenda items 13 and 14, Legistar 84449 and 84450. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda? Commissioner Solheim, and seconded by Alder Field. Are there any additional comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will assume unanimous consent on the consent agenda. Thank you. Then moving to the first item after the consent agenda, agenda item 3, Legistar 84643, approving housing recommendations that serve to strengthen efforts to expand rental, homeowner, and student developments prepared by the Housing Strategy Committee. And my understanding is first we will hear from Lynette Rhodes. Lynette?
Hello, everybody. So I am Lynette Rhodes. I am one of the managers in the city's community development division. I'm here with our director, Jim O'Keefe, as well. So I am just going to give a very high summary of the housing report that is attached to this agenda item. In the fall of 2023, our Common Council asked the Housing Strategy Committee to really focus on 3 questions. How can we create more homeownership types? How can we upscale and create more rental units? And specifically, how can we create more rental units for student housing? The Housing Strategy Committee decided to tackle those 3 topics by creating subcommittees. So for over 6 months, the subcommittees met to bring in panels of people to talk to city staff from a variety of agencies, to even pull in alders to participate in the conversation as well. And we divided those subcommittees and those topics into 3 areas so that we could kind of in-depth talk about each of the topics. So there was a rental housing group, a homeownership subcommittee group, and then due to the fact that we always need more assistance in supporting admin and just strengthening the possibility of having more meetings, DMI, Downtown Madison Inc., volunteered to take on the conversation related to student housing. We knew that conversation was going to need to bring in the university and other individuals. So that was not an official city subcommittee. So they held their meetings in DMI's office. But the subcommittees brought all of the information back to the Housing Strategy Committee. And then in June and July, the full Housing Strategy Committee looked at the recommendations from those subgroups. We wrote in the report kind of a status of some of the recommendations that the Housing Strategy Committee is recommending. A lot of the work that the Housing Strategy Committee kind of identified is ongoing work that city staff through our units, through the planning unit, through building inspection, or even EDD is working on. So we wanted to make sure that we were identifying where city staff have already kind of identified these recommendations in our work plan. But then there were a few new recommendations as well that we are willing to explore and discuss as city staff. So we attended as staff the Housing Strategy Committee and worked alongside the members to discuss the recommendations, to wordsmith the recommendations. But this is our opportunity now to take the recommendations to other city committees, especially recommendations that might affect city committees, or to get feedback of recommendations that we may have missed. So we are taking the report to tonight's Plan Commission. It will go to our CDBG committee as well. Feedback we get from the other committees, we will take back to another Housing Strategy Committee so they can hear the feedback and make a final recommendation that would finally go to Common Council. So I'm sure between me, Jim, and planning staff that are here, we would be happy to answer questions of any of the recommendations that came from the Housing Strategy Committee.
Thank you, Lynette. Jim, was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I don't need to add anything. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Are there any questions of Lynette or Jim or any recommendations related to the report that they provided? Alderfield.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to share another one that Chair Zellers actually raised via email over the weekend that was, I think, a pretty good idea and not something that I remember talking about as a member of the Housing Strategy Committee and then one of the subcommittees. Folks on the Plan Commission may remember an approval from a few months ago where we saw a request to combine lots for a development proposal that would have resulted in a net fewer count of units on the land that the lot combination occupied, which did for a while have me thinking about whether there was room for a standard or some other limit on the ability to combine property for less housing in the city of Madison. And so we're not exactly clear what a strategy would look like, but I'm kind of interested if there's support on the commission in recommending adding that we explore tools to curb the net loss of units as a result of new single-family home construction and replacements. And we did talk a little bit with staff about that too. So it seems like that wouldn't be a drastic change or a strange addition to the list, but I wanted to throw that out there before we have a motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Alderfield. Commissioner Solheim, did you have any comments about the recommendation or did you have something else?
I did have something else, although I was going to add, yes, I support that. Thank you, Alderfield and Chair Zellers for raising that. I had a question on the report for Liddell. Let me find on page 8, one of the recommendations towards the bottom related to regulatory framework is establish performance and accountability measures around review processes. And I was just wondering if you could give a little background on that. Is that accountability measures internally related to the review process or for external parties?
Lynette?
There she is. Okay, I was searching for your face.
So yeah, it was a conversation, a lot of just kind of the timeline of review from developers, especially with the developer feedback. So we kind of discussed kind of two things. Planning staff had said that they had already kind of started creating a work group to look at internally what were some of the pinpoints of our process of how long it takes things to review. And then there's another recommendation in here about having a kind of a public meeting through the Housing Policy Committee that is going to be created. Just so everyone knows, our Housing Strategy Committee and our Landlord and Issues Committee is actually going to be merging, and we are creating then a Housing Policy Committee to take those two committees. So one of the recommendations also was ensuring that there is at least an annual opportunity for developers and so forth to provide feedback on city process through that design. I would say that, planning staff definitely kind of recognized that the feedback from developers is to try to figure out, to the best of our ability, how to streamline processes. And that's what that kind of was attached to.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. One other question. There was, obviously a emphasis in here on creating affordable units for those at the lowest income levels that also need services. Was there any thought to including recommendations related to the supportive service providers that are often necessary, or is that a little outside the realm of this kind of like, pure creation of housing units report?
So that the whole service providers and expanding capacity is something already in CDD's work plan, and is usually something that we discuss in the request for proposals process. The conversations, especially in the recommendations, was really about how are we creating the more units. But absolutely, I think we all talked about the need for making sure those support services are there as well. And I think that's something that when we especially take it to these recommendations to the CDBG committee, we'll be discussing, how that plays out in our RFP processes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lynette.
Thank you, Nicole. Commissioner Solheim. Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on Alder Field's idea about perhaps not allowing fewer units on a parcel. That's a combination of parcels or whatever the situation. And I guess I'm a little bit worried about unintended consequences, although I like the concept. I'm thinking, I don't even know if some of these are applicable, but I'm thinking of the establishment of a housing co-op. Is that one living unit or multiple living units? A senior living facility, is that one living unit or two? And they might be noble things to pursue in using a lot combination. So I'm sure bright minds on city staff could figure out those permutations so that anything that is crafted will accommodate that kind of a thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Heck. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you. I have a question for Lynette. So we have heard a lot talk about how developers get the upper hand per se when it comes to projects. How there's this constant narrative about how much they benefit and how easy the city makes it for them to get projects through the process, through the systems. So I was wondering, is there, do you guys have a flow chart of some sort, some way that it's easy to visualize all the steps that takes for a developer to get a project completed from when the idea begins all the way through when the construction gets approved to start?
Yeah, I'm actually going to refer that question to maybe our planning department. Maybe Colin, could you take that because you're talking about the whole process through planning.
Yeah, so I'm talking like when you're saying that we collected developers' input for these particular guidelines or recommendations, and the feedback is that we make it pretty hard to, that it's hard for them to get through the process. It would be great to see that in a visual form, and then when we say we're going to improve it, then in the future say, well, these are the steps that we improve. Like, it would be nice to see the process as it is today, and what does that look like, and then how that evolves based on the improvements that we make over the years.
Yeah, Alder Figueroa Cole, I think that's a good idea. We do have resources in a couple different places. I'm sure you've seen slides similar to this in neighborhood meetings, but also in some of the Alder onboarding materials as well that explain the development review process that have these. I think the reason why we probably don't have a comprehensive flowchart of sorts for this is that it typically is very complicated depending on what is being requested. There are many different iterations for any one development to go through for the process. So I think it's something that staff could potentially put together, but it may take a little bit of coordination to do that. And it looks like zoning administrator Katie Bannon has input on this as well.
Katie?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, Lynette was referring to this, I believe, a little bit too, that this is a big project that Heather Stouter is working on out of the director's office around how to improve our development review process. That's been ongoing for at least a few months now. She's had some interviews with a number of developers and got a lot of really great feedback. And so some of these things, align with a lot of what the Housing Strategy Committee's report has here around how do we speed up our development process? How do we add more transparency? How do we get an update to this? We do have a chart out there, but it hasn't been updated a little bit. So I know that's one of the things on the list as well. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I would appreciate some of that information to be put there in a way that is easier to consume by people. Because I know like the ordinances alone are a little bit of a nightmare, right? If I hadn't been part of the plan commission, I wouldn't have dig into so deeply to understand them. So the ordinances themselves are pretty hard to follow at times, but that still I don't still see the whole picture. All I hear is, one side of the coin is how easy they have it, and then the other side is like how hard it is. And it would be nice to kind of try to settle that question for everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Is there anything else? I would be interested in any other thoughts on Alder Field's suggestion of exploring tools to curb the net loss of units. Any other comments or thoughts? Alder Ugair.
I'm also interested in pursuing the thoughts that you put forward, Chair Zeller, as well as Alder Field's comments. I think explore is probably the right word to avoid any of those unintended consequences, but it seems to make sense at a time when we've got this generally recognized housing crisis, that the last thing we need is to reduce the number of houses for any purpose within the city. But I also, if I may go further, had a question for either Lynette or Jim O'Keefe. The report, which I participated in as part of the Housing Strategy Committee, has made note of the potential conflict, if we could call that, the difficulty in setting priorities, that in one side, we look at and approve and have ongoing programs that provide funding to increase homeownership, especially among the lower income tranches. But we also then have a variety of tools for doing the same thing to provide affordable rental housing. And it's noted in the report that we get a bigger bang for the buck for the rental housing than we do for the money it takes to increase the home ownership. And so when either a matter of what we look here at the Plan Commission or CDBG or at the council, I guess we could say that we haven't in the report given any particular guidance on how to wrestle with that potential conflict for funds. And I wonder if you just had any comments of your own on how we in the future might deal with that dichotomy of the size of the bang for the buck with those funds.
It is a great question. And I'm sure it is a question that the CDBG committee will discuss when this report goes to them as well, as especially city financing of affordable housing typically goes through the CDD unit and is then discussed through the CDBG committee. Right now, you are correct. We are investing maybe $35,000 up to $45,000, $50,000 per unit for rental. We, in our last RFP, were investing about $150,000 per unit for homeownership opportunities. So we definitely see those different leverage of things. I think at this point right now, especially in looking at recommendations of different homeownership types, we're really looking at exploring how we can support the private market in order to encourage the development of such things like condos in manufactured housing, and really kind of dive into the impacts of what the private market is willing to do to finance some of those things. What are our partnerships with opportunities like WIDA to expand, and our local banks. So I don't know if we're at the point yet where we're ready to kind of percentage and divide out the annual amount we get for our affordable housing fund, home funds, our CDBG funds that we put in those rental versus home ownership, until we can figure out how we are making sure we leverage those private sources for those other things as well.
Oh, thank you. That's very helpful.
Any other questions or comments? Alderfield, did you wish to make a motion?
I would be happy to. Thank you, Chair. I move that the Plan Commission recommends adoption of the report with the addition of another recommendation that staff explore tools to curb the net loss of units as a result of new single-family home construction or replacements.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Gare. Any comments, discussion? Seeing none, I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is the Northeast Area Plan. Agenda item 15 and 16, Legistar 84379, adopting the Northeast Area Plan, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan, and archiving underlying plans. And Legistar 84382, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan related to the Northeast Area Plan. And my understanding is that Dan McAuliffe and Angela will be giving us an overview of this. Angela Puerta, are you kicking it off?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Good evening. So Dan is sharing the screen. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so thank you. So we are here tonight to present the final draft of the Northeast Area Plan, but we will focus on primarily the changes that we've made since we met with this commission on March 14th. So we introduced the final draft on July 16th, which was referred to various committees and commissions. So now with the Plan Commission, which is the lead body of this process, we are seeking recommendation for approval to the Common Council. So as you can see here in the timeline, we are in the final phase. We conducted multiple meetings ever since we started in January 2023. And yeah, so next. So since we met, next. Dan, please. Okay. Yeah, so since we met in March, we conducted four, 2 in-person events and 2 online meetings to give ample opportunity to the community to provide feedback. Also, people provided feedback through our interactive mapping tool, and some sent comments via email as well. So the comments that we received about the draft plan. So regarding the support that we received, they were about the East Town Mall, some of the recommendations that we carried over from the East Town Mall area plan. So for example, like the missing middle and affordable housing. Also, another recommendation about the Hayes Road redevelopment in Sandburg neighborhood and the redevelopment of Frontage Road of East Washington. And in general, people were very vocal about investment in this area in compared to other areas that might receive more the attention that is perceived that they really need. Concerns or skepticism, so especially around services to the homeless individuals in the area, and how that might look like for example, the permanent homeless shelter. There were also questions and some concerns about the Highway 51 and East Washington intersection, even with the Wisconsin DOT proposed improvements that we will talk about in a minute. And something that came up kind of recent is the opposition of the Nakusa Trail extension. And we also received an opposition probably a few months ago from a resident regarding the Parkside extension. A few comments about lack of detail, or maybe that the plan seemed to be very nebulous, or potentially complex, in that some of the recommendations might look too long-term and people would like to see changes pretty soon. Next. Yeah, so talking about the draft plan format, so as you all know, it will be primarily organized via the chapters that we have in the comp plan, so the 7 elements, in addition to the community action strategy, which is the areas that will receive federal funds that are eligible to receive community development block grant funds. So in a bottom line, what the plan shares is a summary of what we've heard through the process, what are the actions that we can take as a city and that are feasible, potentially within the 10 years horizon, and recommendations to partnerships, those recommendations that we didn't want to lose, but we know that might not be able to be accomplished, but we still want to see there in the future in case there is the opportunity. Next. Yeah, so in response to the comments that we received in March from the Commission, so we increased the allowable intensity on the east side of Sear Road, kind of along East Springs. So Dan is pointing out that area, and also in East Springs. So it was low, medium residential, and now it's medium residential. We also increased density on East Wash near Theater BRT station. And also a change on Lynn Road, primarily the area that currently is occupied by Target. Next. So something that we changed since we presented, we added change or an adjustment to the TOD overlay. So that was in response to the land use change on the target parcel. So the parcel, by changing it to commercial, CCT along Lynn Road and just leaving commercial at the target parcel, that parcel will not have frontage, and it will be primarily surrounded by industrial areas and wetlands, which is not ideal for TOD purposes. So we are recommending an adjustment of the boundary. We did hear an objection from a property owner on Area D, but the change from commercial to industrial in this case was to avoid future residential uses. We did hear from one resident, in a position that there is not non-conforming use of the property, so we left it as industrial. After we met with the commissioners, we sent postcards to all those properties that were impacted or in the future could be impacted by the proactive rezoning. So that was something that the team did. Next. Yeah, so, and one of the discussions that we've been having lately, it's about the Nakusa trail extension. We proposed this recommendation ever since we released the first draft of the recommendation. So that was about a year ago, with the intention of providing more visibility to the park, improving connectivity with surrounding neighborhoods, allow Sycamore to be more, to having that front door in the south side of the park rather than Highway 30. And also to increase the street frontage of the park access, visibility, utilization, etc. So we can go in more detail. Go to the next one, Dan. So in here you can see where we can zoom in the area. So we also took a look at potentially providing other access points. So we didn't necessarily need the extension of the road. As you can see here in the picture, on the right top left, sorry, during the planning process, residents expressed concerns about the safety of Pulley and Commercial Avenue. So that's that intersection. However, this intersection unfortunately falls under a very complicated mix of jurisdictions, with areas that are managed by 3 different agencies, so primarily City of Madison, Wisconsin DOT, and Dane County. So making changes could be very, very challenging. The city could potentially make improvements, but again, this could be challenging for us to improve that intersection. So as you can see, one of the extensions at the beginning, when we released the draft, we proposed this kind of connection, but again, the details of how the design of the street might extend, that would be up to parks, and whenever that time arrives to make that connectivity another option. And here you can see another alternative of the design of the street, so it doesn't take much of parkland. But again, the details could be penned out later. So we are still recommending the extension of the street. We are proposing to add a text that kind of highlights that the design might change. There could be a different alternative in the way the street is connected and how it's connected, but we already have the right-of-way at least to Pulley Drive. So we see that connectivity as an improvement of the area in general. And Dan, you're next if you want to add something that I might have missed.
Sure. I'm going to jump back there. Just to recap, going back to the Board of Park Commissioners, their vote was to recommend approval of plan with the exception of the extension of Nakusa Trail through Sycamore Park. I do want to highlight one of the big concerns that was raised during that meeting was the potential for the street to split parkland. So what we're showing here is the original alignment proposed, or kind of conceptual alignment shown in part of our plan. As remember, plans are really big picture and conceptual. And so we don't go through and usually map out the exact alignments. That would create about 1.5 acre parcel of land south. And there were some commissioners did raise some concerns. And so what we are recommending, as Anala mentioned, was to maintain the street connection, but really have parks be the one that dictate the path through a future Sycamore Park master plan update. So the other street connection that we've discussed was Parkside Drive. This is again kind of extension of Parkside Drive, possibly leading up at Mendota Street. That is from the Greater Easttown Area Plan continued forward. We also mentioned as part of this, we will be looking to officially map more aligned what was done in the Odana Area Plan. We have, as Angela mentioned before, sent out postcard notifications to all property owners that could be impacted by this. And we have also ensured that the official mapping is now public. It is on our open data portal. There was some questions about that in the past, but we do know that it's publicly available information. As we mentioned, we're also not only looking to enhance connectivity, but we're also looking to remove right-of-way or unnecessary right-of-way. Couple things that we just as Anna mentioned, on the north side of East Washington by Easttown, working on possibly removing that over time to allow redevelopment to be closer to the street to create a more pedestrian active environment, as well as on Highway or Commercial Avenue at the south. This is kind of one of the graphics that's showing a potential alternative for how that could occur. We don't know, again, there's different ways that it could be partially vacated. This is largely within the county's jurisdiction. So our hope is that we can work with our partners at the county to better utilize that space moving forward. Within the transportation section, there's also a couple updates. And this is kind of the bike network map. On the left side is the introduced version. On the right side is a revised recommendation that reflects a couple bike improvements that are recently kind of coming about as a result of the Highway 51 study. That includes an off-street path on the east side of Highway 51 between East Washington and Highway 30, as well as a important off-street connection or grade separated connection south of Highway 30. And there's some text in the staff memo that kind of highlights that as well. It's something that we do recommend be incorporated into the study moving forward. Also, this is largely recapping stuff that you've seen before. The pedestrian network with our sidewalk gaps and our priority additions. You might recall kind of our tier 1 sidewalks from Madison Motion. This is kind of replacing that, but areas that we see higher needs for us, the city, to proactively install sidewalks where we have schools, higher speeds, greater utilization transfer, or just really important gaps that need to be addressed. So these are largely on Lexington, Sycamore, Walsh, East Washington, and up on Portage Road and on Anderson Street. We do have a section about the Wisconsin DOT studies. The first section is on Highway 51. The recommended alternatives from WSDOT should be out very, very shortly, but for the time being, they are not. So we are recommend a couple big things on East Washington. We are opposed to the closures of Rowland and MacArthur. So these are the local streets that intersect East Washington, very near to that intersection. We are recommending the 3-legged intersection at Lexington. We think this provides a better basically path for bikes and pedestrians, as you might recall from the Hawthorne Truex plan. it was really discussed as a really important need to connect that Hawthorne neighborhood to Walmart, because that is kind of their primary grocery store. And we're recommending the conventional intersection at Highway 30 instead of the diverging diamond. With the interstate study, we've expressed our concerns about corridor expansion. There's also sections on each of the interchanges, including the potential reconfiguration of the East Washington and the interstate interchange, and the potential benefits that this alternative would have with the addition of 2 new stoplights, better control and speed as it moves into the area. It also is discussion about the potential interchange at Hepker Road and some of the impacts that might have. We've also prioritized the off-street interstate crossings for bikes, particularly at the rail line by Lean, so just kind of south down here. At East Washington Avenue is this blue line on the north side that connects Sandburg neighborhood to the American Center, and Hayes to East Park, so kind of right up here as well. So the remaining sections, I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights of the recommendations. Within our neighborhood and housing section, we'll continue to incentivize affordable housing, particularly on the bus rapid transit corridor through our affordable housing fund. We do want to see that wider mix of rental units, particularly so that we can ensure that some are appropriate sizes for families. And consider designating this area as a targeted rental rehab loan program the city has, as well as investing in food retail. So some of these areas have been identified as food deserts, so doing what we can to rectify those issues. In economy and opportunity, establish a greater Easttown Mall implementation team. So kind of a throwback to the implementation team that was used on the Capitol East corridor. We saw that as a really great model and something that might be good to kind of start unpacking all the issues that are present and redeveloping a complex site like Easttown. We do want to see some promotion of small business development and that tax increment district to help support those. Utilize our land banking fund where appropriate and have a focus on employment in there. Enhance our airport business zone, so the business parks near the airport, both in the east and the west side, and promote the foreign trade zone to attract businesses and employment to the area. Within our culture and character section, revise and update our Urban Design District 5, continue with our art and placemaking elements, and historic resources, inform owners about not only the national register process, but the local register process. That's actually one of the comments that came out of the Landmarks Commission's recommendations. For green and resilience, we have a new parkland map. We did respond to Plan Commission's comment last time about kind of transitioning this area to a general park. Remember, one of the things we tried to do from the Greater Easttown Area Plan is provide more specificity where possible, and where we know parkland is strongly desired, transition that location to the future land use map to give us more leverage in acquiring that land in the future. There's a couple park-specific improvements, including better define the northern edge of Sandburg Park, as well as some potential changes to the Nakusa Trail bike path in the short term to prevent driving from that as well. We also mentioned we have the Community Action Strand action strategy for the Sandburg, Burke Heights, and Hawthorne Truax plan. So for this plan, we developed those strategies for Sandburg as well as Burke Heights. Hawthorne Truax, that plan was those actions were incorporated from the very recently adopted, but recommended to be archived Hawthorne Truax neighborhood plan. Focus on capacity building in there and the small scale physical improvements with about $200,000 per area to spend. And lastly, as I mentioned, the plan or the resolution does recommend archiving past previously adopted underlying plans in a sense, so that helps us kind of keep a clean plan environment, so we don't have conflicting plans of different areas saying different things from different times. And I think that's also why we are recommending that ordinance update the comprehensive plan so all of the plans are aligned We did go through a scan of all these plans and incorporated the relevant recommendations into our current plan, but recommendations that were either already completed, obsolete, or currently against city policy, those did not make the cut. So we are, as I mentioned, this is the US Plan Commission is the lead. We've been to 7 BCCs so far, and we'll be going to council on September 10th. That does conclude our presentation. We're happy to answer questions now or after public comment.
Thank you. We will first go to our public comment. And we do have several people registered. So I will open the public hearing. The first person registered is Athena Salzer, Pulley Drive, Madison, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak. Athena, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Athena Salzer. I'm a resident of the Burke Heights neighborhood on the northeast side of Madison here. I'm here today because I do not support the Nakusa Trail street extension portion of the plan, and I would love to see it removed from the plan prior to approval. We are very grateful for the public input that was sought out for the Northeast Area Plan. My partner and I attended many of the meetings, as many as we were able. We also attended mostly all of the Sycamore Park master plans that took place. Sincerely appreciate the opportunity to participate in that process. That was amazing. However, it seems the Nakusa Trail street extension was added after the fact, and it's kind of taken our neighborhood and fellow park users by surprise as a later addition to the Northeast Area Plan. It is my understanding that the road extension was added to address a lack of connectivity between Burke Heights neighborhood and the surrounding communities. I am certain that I was one of the people who brought up that lack of connectivity at the public input meetings. However, Burke Heights is already very reasonably connected to the rest of the city for car traffic. If you look at our neighborhood on a map, we are a very small 7-block neighborhood that is basically a straight grid. The southernmost east-west road of our neighborhood is Commercial Ave, which is a major thoroughfare. And Sycamore Ave is another major road that runs east-west, just north of our neighborhood. We are very accessible by car. Where we are lacking is our connectivity for bicycles, pedestrians, etc. We do have the new pedestrian overpass that's currently being built over 30. We're super excited about that. We also have some amazing new mountain bike trails that are just built in Sycamore that'll be drawing in tons of new visitors from surrounding areas, many of which will likely be arriving by bicycle.
You have 1 minute remaining, Athena. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yep. Not to mention, it's already a very heavily used park. A new road that would run through Sycamore Park would largely just create a corridor for higher speed pass-through traffic. Creating that road that runs along the south edge will only serve to decrease safe access for those not arriving by car. I also want to address that the road through Sycamore won't alleviate the clumsy intersection at Pulley and Commercial. People arriving to the neighborhood from the south are still probably going to use that intersection instead of going north around. And again, that'll just only serve to decrease safety for those not arriving by car. The recent Parks Commission meeting voted to approve the Northeast Area Plan with the exception of Nakusa Trail street extension, and I would strongly urge you to do the same. And that is all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Athena. And questions will follow all of the public input. So the next registrant is Eric Gertner, Pulley Drive, Madison, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak. Eric, you have 3 minutes.
Hi there. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I've got several, just to echo what Athena just said. I'm also one of the residents of the Burke Heights neighborhood, and I ask that you adopt the Northeast Area Plan without the Nakusa Trail street extension at Sycamore Park. And it's really for 2 reasons. One of them, like Athena said, we're looking for better and safer access to the area for non-car users. Like I said, I was one of the Burke Heights residents asking for that better connectivity through the Pulley Commercial and Highway 30 on-ramp intersection, but specifically for those non-car users. I can't imagine my kid or my parents navigating that intersection safely on foot or by bike. By car, the proposed road isn't much benefit. The neighborhood is already connected. There are 3 roads immediately north, 2 blocks south of the proposed road, plus Conlin 1 block south if you don't mind an extra turn. Those roads all also show that east-west roads in the area tend to have speeding problems, no matter the traffic volume. At the same time, Burke Heights and Sycamore Park already have good, safe bike ped connections internally and soon also over Highway 30. Adding yet another road through either in the park or along the park would only reduce safe access to the area. The second is respecting previous, more equitable neighborhood and park user input. The recently adopted Sycamore Park Master Plan had excellent and sustained outreach to users from the diverse surrounding neighborhood and community. That plan recommends an off-street bike path and keeping the existing soccer field in the southeast corner of the park. In contrast, people don't seem to have gotten the same level of outreach for the area plan with the proposed road there instead. One example, the road would either cut through or immediately beside the soccer field that's used every single warm weekend for Latinx club play. You should talk with them rather than take my word for it, but they didn't know about the proposed road and didn't want it. We've heard the same surprised reaction from every other neighbor and park user we've talked to.
Eric, you have 1 minute remaining.
Great, thank you. Closing up, the planners have mentioned residents' requests as support for the road, but it's really not what we're asking for. So the Board of Parks Commissioners, as has been noted before, voted to approve the Northeast Area Plan with the exception of the Nakusa Trail Street extension, and I urge you folks to do the same. Thank you for your time. Thanks for the opportunity to comment, and thank you all for working to make the city a great place.
Thank you, Eric. Our next registrant is Carrie McAllen, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak, representing the Burke Heights Neighborhood Association. Carrie, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to say I am in opposition to the extension of the Nakusa Trail to Jana Lane through Sycamore Park. As president, I have had several neighbors tell me they are also in opposition, and no one who is in support of this road. The City of Madison has a wide vision of alternative transportation, such as bicycling and walking. This is codified by 2 major capital investments in the Burke Heights neighborhood this year, the Autumn Ridge Bicycle Bridge over Highway 30 and the single track or pump bike trail in Sycamore Park that my neighbors have already mentioned. Common themes for all aspects of the Northeast Plan from residents is that we want safer neighborhoods and more park space. After investing millions of taxpayer dollars in the 2 major capital projects, a road connecting Nakusa Trail and Jana Lane would create a barrier to use of these 2 infrastructure investments, diminishing the impact of both projects to the cycling community and pedestrian traffic, reducing the value of the capital investment, and it will further fragment the bike path system. Second, a road here would create additional and unnecessary safety issues for those using the new bicycle bridge and those who presently use the park and popular dog park. The city's recommendation to extend Nakusa Trail is redundant. The Sycamore Dog Park is highly utilized by surrounding neighbors and patrons who drive a vehicle. The park equipment, shelter, and soccer fields are and have been highly utilized with the present access and visibility. Sycamore Park is very well accessed via Sycamore Avenue with a parking lot and street parking, which borders the north limit of the dog park owned by City Engineering and parkland owned by the Madison Parks Department. Jana Lane provides superior park visibility, street parking, and access along the east limits of Sycamore Park.
Carrie, you have 1 minute remaining.
Another road would nearly encircle the entire park, limiting safe and easy bicycle and pedestrian traffic to the park. It seems appropriate to allow the new Autumn Ridge Bike Bridge to bring cyclists and pedestrians to increase the access to Sycamore Park rather than building another road for cars. I would also like to add that I should think that the City of Madison ought to be able to talk to WSDOT and the county to better address the issues at Commercial and Pulley. And I would also like to thank city engineering or roads for trimming the trees that were obscuring our right turn only sign. That was done, or whomever did that. But things can be done at that intersection, and there have only been 2 accidents in the last 5 years, I'm told. So while the intersection is wonky,
Thank you, Carrie. That concludes your available time. The next registrant is Jessica Alter, Bewick Drive, Madison opposed and wishing to speak. Jessica, you have 3 minutes.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. Are you able to hear me all right?
Yes.
Excellent. I am in opposition to the Nakusa Park extension, not the plan in the entirety. My name is Jessie. I live at 821 Bewick Drive. My family's been here since the 1960s. I'm heavily invested in this neighborhood. After learning about the Northeast Area Plan and how it differs from the already adopted Sycamore Park Master Plan, we've been to the Urban Design Commission, the Board of Parks Commissions. Now we're joining you all for the Plan Commission, and we'll see you at the Common Council meeting too. I'm here mostly to ask you for your help. I'd like for you to help amplify our voice, amplify the voice of our neighborhood, of our community, of the people who use this park. Please vote to remove the Nakusa Trail Extension Park from the Northeast Plan. The Sycamore Park Master Plan was already adopted, and it's in conflict. It annotates an off-road bicycle corridor and also keeps the southernmost soccer field whole and intact. Members of the Plan Commission, please honor the Sycamore Park Master Plan as it is. Take the road out of the Northeast Plan. This is the improvement that would be of benefit, not the road. If you look, you see that the Planning Committee changed the extension a bit. They make it hug the property a little bit more, but that will force people to veer a little bit to avoid a family home, continue straight, then hang a little bit of a left, this and that, for what? A couple extra seconds saved by car? We don't want it. We don't need it. It's dangerous in the wintertime. Accidents are prone to happen to pedestrians, bikers, and park goers. This opportunity for an accident doesn't currently exist in the park. We don't want to create it. The most recent planning memo says about different alignment, valued access, safety, and connectivity. It's not about alignment of the road. The spirit of the vote from the park commissioners was not that
1 minute remains, Jessica.
That the parcels were segmented, but based on the comment, they saw that residents did not desire a road in the park. That is my belief of the spirit of the vote from that commission. Numerous Minnesotans have provided written statement, at least over 50 that I've seen. Again, Athena stated that we're very small, 7 blocks. So to have over 50 comments, that's huge. That should tell you, please help us, please amplify our vote. Please get this out of the plan. People should have an expectation of being safe from traffic while enjoying the park. Let us not invite cars into the park by literally building a road for them. Please vote to remove the Nakusa Trail extension from the plan. Thank you and solidarity.
Thank you, Jessica. Our next registrant is Brian Wendt, Bewick Drive, Madison opposed and wishing to speak. Brian, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, Brian here. I feel that tearing up any portion of the park and inviting road traffic to run through the park, as well as through or even next to one of the soccer fields, is an unsafe and terrible idea. People enjoy utilizing the park because it is free from traffic and noise. I am also concerned that the many kids who access the park with each other on foot, bike, or other means will be put at a higher risk of danger because of the traffic zipping through. Just a couple years ago, some of the neighbors had to ask the city to erect stop signs on Conlin in an attempt to slow down people cutting through the neighborhood. Yet I can't tell you how many times I've come through and watched people just zip right past those stop signs without care in the world. Just today at 2:47 p.m., a reckless driver traveling westbound from Pulley on Conlin flew right past the stop signs right behind me at a high rate of speed. Had I left my house less than 2 seconds later than I did, I believe I would have been hit right on the driver's side. After talking with many of my neighbors, their main concern With this type of behavior happening so often, they can't believe the city would consider putting a road through the park. So I encourage all of you to come down here on the south end of Sycamore Park and look at just where this road is planned to be, as well as its impact on the land here, rather than continuing to look at it on a map. Sycamore Park is highly utilized, easily accessible, with exception of current traffic flow, and plenty visible. A road through the park is a detriment any way you slice it, not a benefit. Again, I'll ask, how close is too close for a road to run next to or through a park? I also think parks should acquire the south end of the park that's currently quote unquote zoned, if you will, as city property. Please remove the extension of Nakusa Trail from the Northeast Area Plan as a whole. The soccer field is not the only portion of the park that this extension will affect.
Brian, you have 1 minute.
All right. Lastly, I sent an email to PC Comments at City of Madison today giving a breakdown of how many neighbors that I've talked to believe the extension will play out for traffic management. So please give that a read. And again, please remove this extension of Nakusa Trail in its entirety. We don't want any part of it running through the park. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brian. We also have Todd Timmerman of Pulley Drive, Madison, registered in opposition and available to answer questions. Are there questions of any of our registrants? Commissioner Field.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to see if Carrie wanted to conclude her comments before we move on.
Carrie McAllen.
Yep.
Thank you, Alderman Field. I was pretty much concluded just saying, I just wanted to thank you for the, getting some of the work done that I had recommended previously in my comments, regarding, trimming back the trees, that were obscuring the signs, on Commercial Avenue that lead up to the intersection of Commercial and Pulley. And, that, you know, I think that we, as the folks living in the neighborhood, I'm sure we can reach out to WSDOT and the county, and hopefully that, you know, we can foster some communication to, you know, deal with maybe painting and, you know, I know that that area is under construction as well. But I don't think that the overall safety of that intersection should drive a new road through the park either. I think that the accident rate is quite low. I think that's been discussed. I believe we learned that from you, Alderman. But though it's a strange intersection and it does get busy and it can be tough to get through. I think that the thought is that it's not overly dangerous per se. It's just, it can be difficult to get through. So
thank you.
That pretty much completes my comments. Thank you all.
Thank you, Carrie. Did you have any follow-ups, Alderfield?
I did not. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Megan, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We did have somebody that registered at 5:11 today, so is not on your list. Travis Grucho, registered as neither support nor oppose, but wish to speak.
Okay, why don't we hear from Travis and then we'll move to Alder Ugair's question. Travis, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, I live on Wayridge Drive, so I'm on the north end of the park, but I wanted to reiterate that I am opposed to the road connecting to Nakusa Trail as well. I'm really grateful for the mountain bike trails that were put in and fixing the runoff. I bike through there every day. My family bikes through there every day to go to work and go to school. And road going through there would just mean another road for us to have to cross. I know I read in one of the plans that they talked about like that there is unnecessary, like unauthorized motor vehicles driving down the bike path. So I just am nervous about what type of car traffic that connecting that road through the park would bring to the neighborhood park. As a parent, I don't want my kids accessing the mountain bike trails in that area with a road running through there. And we already talked about the soccer field that could get disrupted. And I just think it's like a backwards mentality towards like the idea that the city of Madison is a platinum city for bicycling and also Vision Zero, like trying to have zero traffic deaths, and you're running a road trying to connect through right next to a park. The one thing that you talked about earlier in the meeting about giving it greater access to the park by running a road there, but the park is already accessed quite well. There's parking all around. And for people going for the mountain bike trails, they can park anywhere or bike in. If they brought their bikes by a car, like there isn't a problem with access to the park. Like I don't see a road being a cure to access to the park, just a hindrance for people actually trying to get through into the park. And then just unnecessary, just the idea that there could be an accident from like a kid trying to get access to the park crossing that road. I already can't send my kids across.
You have 1 minute remaining, Travis.
I can't send my kids to the park by themselves already from my house because they have to cross Sycamore, and I don't trust drivers on that road. And then if you put a road in on the south end, you're blocking off access to the park from families that live south of Sycamore Park. So again, I reiterate with everybody else about taking that extension out of the plan. So thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Okay, we will continue with questions. Alder Ugair.
Thank you. This is a question for Ms. Salzer, if she's still available.
Athena Salzer?
Yes.
Yes.
Athena, you had mentioned that you were probably one who were interested in exploring additional connectivity, not in the form of traffic, car traffic, but in additional connections with bike and pedestrian pathways. Could you just clarify, was that a specific interest along the same area, further connection beyond the street that you're opposed to, or was this in some other area? Could you just expand a little bit on what kind of connectivity you were hoping for?
Jesse, is Athena?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, yep, thank you. No, the connectivity really is, because we're in the northeast part of the city, so the connectivity is really to the rest of the city that's predominantly southwest of us. So Highway 30 and Stoughton Road are kind of the biggest barriers that block us off from the rest of the city. So it's amazing that the Highway 30 overpass is going in. Like that is a huge component to fixing that. And crossing my fingers that we can get another one over Stoughton Road someday. But yeah, predominantly south of us, because right now there's not much of a reason, even for cars, honestly, in our neighborhood, like for northeast part, right? Like the rest of the city is mostly southwest of us. So this road doesn't do much for that either. Not until they redo the larger northeast mall area, the Easttown Mall area, then there's, I don't know, more up that way, but it's predominantly southwest.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Are there any other questions for any of our registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I'll close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. This is for, well, I'm not sure who it's for, either planning staff or I see Eric Knepp is here too. I'm interested in the reasons for why staff feels the Sycamore Park needs more accessibility, but also I want to understand what type of park it is, if it's a community park and the accessibility needs to increase for people from outside the neighborhood, that perhaps makes more sense to me. Or are you thinking about nearby residents need more accessibility?
I'll start, and then I'll invite Eric Knepp to kind of add some thoughts as well. So I think one of the things that when we saw this area, when we kind of look back, I think it's tough to look at the area without understanding the history of this. So as we mentioned, most of the Nacusa, and I'm going to share just so we have a graphic, so we can kind of talk through this right now. So most of the Nacusa Trail extension, so right now the roadway currently ends at Ziegler, but the right-of-way extends all the way to Pulley Drive. It's our working theory that this road was never improved because it was built at a time when Commercial Avenue was a avenue and not Highway 30, and Sycamore Park was a landfill. Obviously, things have changed, and when we kind of look through this area, I think one of our kind of working theories about how we design our cities and how we design our street networks is to have a compact, walkable grid where we have, encouraged visibility and activity at our amenities. In this case, that amenity is Sycamore Park. As you kind of mentioned before, the current pattern kind of forces Highway 30 to be the front door. We have a kind of a problematic intersection at Pulley and Commercial. And as you might recall, through many of our planning studies over the past years, we update plans. We are always trying to add street frontage to parks because we know where there's frontage, there's visibility, where there's visibility, there's activity, and doing so, it's really helpful for our public amenities to maintain that public amenity rather than kind of being, and sometimes when they fall into a backyard condition, they almost become private resources. So I'll let Eric kind of add on to the types of parks and the activities that they see there as well.
Eric?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Heck. Sorry, I almost called you Alder. The park, Sycamore Park, is a community park in our categorization system. So it's meant to serve a broader area of the community. Certainly featuring primarily, featuring a number of things, but the large dog park is a big part. The athletic fields, playground, shelter, as mentioned, mountain biking trails, all of those kind of amenities. They are not necessarily just for, close walkable service. Those community parks really kind of have a 2 mile, roughly, kind of service area as far as how we look at that. And long-term Sycamore, I think, part that I would reference, we do expect to and anticipate expanding the park to some extent westerly in the future. And so as far as it relates to frontages and roads and parks, certainly, as Dan said, eyes on a park make a safer park. And it's not the only way you get eyes, but vehicular traffic and general activity and walkers on sidewalks does help. The bike path there helps as well. And I do just want to make sure, I'm sure this commission knows well, the only part here we're talking about this park is that far southeastern corner. There is right-of-way. It's been talked about a few times, I think, that extends, the majority of the Nacusa extension would be on right-of-way that's platted as such. But that's kind of the type of park. It's long-term vision. There's another piece of Sycamore Park to the north of the Sycamore maintenance yard. As well. So it's a large park, a large complex of park holdings that we expect to grow into the future.
Thanks. I don't have any further questions.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. Related to this, so keep this up, please. Could you walk me through, or I guess in this case, drive me through the thought behind the improving connectivity? So I'm assuming that you're looking to get folks from, Jana Lane, they're connecting over to Nacusa Trail to allow people to avoid that intersection at Pulley Drive. But if you could kind of just outline what you think would be a better circulation route, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of one of the ideas. You know, when we look at this area to also the padding pattern, the area between Pulley and Ziegler, you know, if you need to drive to Thompson, you have to cross an on-ramp to get to the bounds of your neighborhood. And just from an urban design and usability standpoint, that does seem kind of problematic where you have a left turn, you're crossing basically freeway speed traffic. So yes, the thought was, you know, to create that porosity and that connection between Nakusa Trail and Jana. We anticipate that being a relatively typical neighborhood street with a typical volume that would be kind of that. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Solheim?
Yes, it does. Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McCahill.
Thank you. And you can leave this image up. Dan, you talked a little bit about the thinking behind this connection, which makes sense to me. I was kind of hoping to learn a little bit more about process, because if my memory is right, Transportation Commission approved this without hardly any discussion of Nakusa Trail, including any public comment. And I know people show up at different meetings for different reasons, but can you just talk through, did these concerns just come up in the last few weeks for some reason, or has this been discussed throughout the entire planning process?
Yeah, so these concerns have just come about within the last couple of weeks and actually since the TC meeting. As Angela mentioned, this has been part of kind of our discussion since about this time last year. It's been a part of every presentation we've given since December of 2023. So it's not new to the plan. However, you know, we understand that people only have so much attention. They can only attend so many meetings. So we understand that it is new to them. As part of the process moving forward, if it were to be included in the plan, it would need to be put as part of some sort of construction plan in the future. That takes council action, it takes funding, it takes coordination with parks, takes approval from Transportation Commission and Board of Public Works as well. So that is kind of how that process has played out to thus far.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Commissioner Basine.
I had a question in terms of, is there a way to anticipate how much increase in use you would anticipate if this, you know, if the Nakusa Trail extension happened? Is there a way to predict how that might impact park usage in a way that you can quantify?
I will let Eric Knepp answer that. He would probably be the best one to know.
Eric.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you all had a way to anticipate, you know, if you know, the Nakusa Trail was extended, like to quantify how that might impact an increase in usage of the park.
I'm not aware of we don't have a specific way that we would do that based on a road access, or I think the number one thing would be that could be contemplated is long-term, you know, capacity of a park. One of the challenges is parking, and street parking, additional street parking adds room for events and like that. But no, we don't have a numerical way to do it. I think what we spend our time in the park and open space plan we're thinking about is growth and demand of need for park space based on densities and growth of residences around an area, which in this general area we expect to grow.
Did you have any follow-up questions, Commissioner? No. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Alder Madison.
Thank you. I just have maybe two questions for Dan.
I went out yesterday with Alder Field to chat with some of the neighboring residents at the park in person. And then on my way there, I noticed there's a large group of kids playing soccer, like a soccer league. And so during our discussion, we learned that that soccer league had not heard about a road potentially proposed over there. So I just wanted to understand the engagement potentially with users of the park for soccer. And then my brain is not a geographic, I'm a social sciences person. If you could help me just understand if that soccer field or where those soccer games are mostly held, how that might be disturbed or interrupted, if at all.
Sure. So we did not reach out to the individual soccer leagues. That would be challenging for us to understand all the field reservations. However, I don't know, Scott.
Yeah, just to add to that, we had community navigators all year doing community engagement, and they did go to Sycamore Park during events or just during the quiet season as well, and distributed flyers trying to inform the public about the planning process. I don't know to what extent they reached out to that particular group, but there is I think there are 2 signs. There still have 2 yard signs in the Sycamore Park, and you can scan the QR code of the plan. I know it's not ideal, right? But we have distributed information as much as we can in the park.
Just to follow up to that thought, did the community navigator sort of like log the groups that they talked to, maybe to pull out whether or not they caught any of the soccer leagues?
They didn't get the information of what people did, like what their job or what their activities were, but we do have a record of the conversations. Mm-hmm. We have that spreadsheet. I don't recall reading anything about this particular action item. People were in favor, in general, of the plan. They were asking, and as we displayed in the most frequently comments, affordable housing, kind of the same feedback that we hear citywide.
Yeah. And part of that also is we tend not to, planning's interface with parks is often, we look at where we expand and the connections that are adjacent to it. We rarely talk about the programming. That's a parallel process. So the recommendation that we put in our staff memo is to maintain the connection, but have that exact path be determined through a future Sycamore Park master plan update. It could go to the south. And so hypothetically, as I mentioned, this light green one is the one we showed. Traffic engineering tends to prefer 4-way intersections, so that's kind of why we aligned it there. It could definitely drop to the south and have a lesser impact and kind of keeping the park space more contiguous. I think to answer the questions about the soccer field, in both of these instances, I don't see the soccer field could definitely shift to the north without a loss of that field. It does take some adjustment to the park space, but if you look at the Sycamore Park master plan and what was adopted recently, it doesn't seem like a major shift would be needed to accommodate a street connection in either of these locations. So I don't see us losing a soccer field, but possibly juggling of some of these other spaces to make everything fit well.
Thank you, Dan. Did that answer your question, Alder?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Alder Field.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question that kind of piggybacks off of one of Alder Madison's questions about the discussions with community navigators, because I understand some of the informing the public piece about this part of the plan proposal, the street extension, is about when that was added to the materials, to the discussions at meetings. When we had community navigators walking around or putting out signs or flyers, were we yet advanced enough through the development of the plan to know that that the Nakusa Trail extension would be included? Or was that all kind of earlier without any concrete ideas that we had most of the folks out knocking doors and talking to people at events?
Angela?
Yes, so we had community navigators, I think from probably May or June until October, just because of the weather. We didn't want them to go during the winter. So we presented this recommendation, I think in August, when we released the first draft of all the recommendations. So there was a portion of time, a few months, that the recommendation was there when community navigators were doing the outreach.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I may be jumping the gun on this question, but I wondered if staff had any idea about the width of the proposed extension. Would there be parking along it, or is that all way TBD?
I think that's a great concept for the Sycamore Park master plan to discuss, because I think it could be done in a lot of different ways. You could see a low speed, very narrow street that basically meets fire lane, just a travel lane in each direction. You could do some parking, maybe it's a reverse angle parking with, bump outs to really keep the street narrow. I do want to just be respectful of the Parks Division and the Parks Commissioner's comments about having it bifurcate. And I think that was probably one of our errors, is not kind of going to them sooner about what design is most amenable to the Park Commissioner. So I think there's a lot of options. I don't think, I don't think this is going to be a 4-lane divided street by any means. This is going to be a relatively typical neighborhood street that is customized to the presence of the park, with I think the Board of Park Commissioners having significant design influence on that street design.
Thank you, Dan. Any follow-ups, Commissioner?
Just a comment to Dan. I'm thinking about traffic calming and street design that will slow people down, because we heard concerns. And you're saying, I guess, that yes, it is too soon to know what it will be, but those are things that you can imagine parks will be pushing for if any design were to occur.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, would that potential street design also include, pedestrian path options? So this would be, the road would potentially replace what is now a nice path that connects to others. And so I assume that analysis would include, as all of our in-street improvements do, what the options are for a shared use path or whatever that may look like.
Yeah, I think that option is certainly there. I would tend to anticipate the shared use path would be replaced to the north, because it's either going to be a sidewalk or a shared use path, and I think there's more utility out of that shared use path, since parks would be responsible for clearing that in the winter as well.
Okay. I did have one question not related to this, if we're ready to move off of this map, but
yes,
I'll see if.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I had a question regarding height limitations, and I know at earlier meetings we talked about the proposed height limits mapping, and I just thought of a follow-up question on that related to the airport height limits. I know some of the height limits in that map are limited to what may otherwise be allowed in that district because of airport height limits. So I guess I'm wondering, with those limits in place, does that render, the opportunity moot to have bonus stories above that related to affordability or sustainability if we cannot go higher due to the airport?
So a couple things there, and Angela, jump in if I forget anything. So what we did so the airport height limit is a maximum elevation over sea level that any building feature cannot exceed. And so what we did is we calculated the maximum building height by using the downtown zoning codes standards for floor-to-floor height. So let me share I have the page in the plan up. hopefully it's legible. Can everybody see the height map?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So basically the white labels, those are areas where if we use the downtown height standards for that, we would have a maximum allowable height of 10 stories. We do know that the downtown height does have a fair amount of capacity built in because they're largely built around commercial floors. So within that height, there could be capacity for bonus stories if you were to take that kind of downtown approach as well. The black numbers are heights that we've seen that, you know, we kind of thought as the most appropriate, but those did not hit that height limit cap. So I guess to answer your question, I believe there to be some capacity for bonus, but kind of along the same lines as what you'd see in the downtown.
Okay, so for example, the 10 with the white lettering could be 12 stories if you met the bonus criteria and were still below the airport height limitation?
Yes, the airport height limit is going to be a hard cap. And I do want to say there's a couple things in that. I mean, this is kind of getting into the weeds, like elevator, penthouse, mechanicals, all that stuff. They do have to fall below the airport height limits, which we're in the downtown, we have allowances that can exceed that. So that is a hard cap, hard elevation, but I do believe there's some capacity for bonus stories.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Solheim. Any further questions of staff? Seeing none, we need a motion. Alderfield.
Thank you, Chair. Am I making separate motions on these items?
Yes, please.
Okay, so on item 15, I move that the Plan Commission forward the Northeast Area Plan to the Common Council with a recommendation for approval with the exception of the Nakusa Trail Street extension. And if I get a second, I'll explain.
Seconded by Alder Duncan. So you wish to speak to your motion, Alderfield?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as folks on the commission probably know, that my district includes the Burke Heights neighborhood, which is included in part of the Northeast Area Plan. I can firsthand share that resident engagement has been tough in this area, not just this neighborhood, but I think through the plan compared to the West Area Plan, for example. Planning staff did organize a handful of events and outreach strategies. I participated in several of them. They were good. However, despite those efforts, most of the resident input on the Northeast Area Plan that I've heard has been in the last few weeks, and it's been about the proposed Nakusa Trail Street extension. One of the points of resident input that I thought was the most compelling is one that we heard in public comment, that many residents' desire for improved connectivity being cut off from most of the city seems to primarily be about connectivity over those major state highway barriers to the south and to the west, highways 30 and 51, and connectivity for alternate modes of transportation to access the city. So neighbors have noted that the existing paths through Sycamore Park in the other directions already fully accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists, and so a potential street extension would primarily benefit cars. Residents have noted that the still pretty new Sycamore Park Master Plan adopted last year, 2023, envisions a proposed off-road bike trail corridor in the southeast corner of Sycamore Park, to the contrary to a street extension. And I imagine a circuit corridor would be difficult to fit with a new street and maintaining the soccer field. Neighbors of the park and the Board of Parks Commission, on a vote of 5-1, asked that the street extension be removed. I think they've made a strong case. So hence my motion.
Thank you. Alder Ugair.
Yes, actually, this is a point of order. We're returning to the lead, correct? And we not only have this matter of the extension of Nakusa Trail, but we have a recommendation I see in the staff notes of a language addition by the Landmarks Commission and a series of text corrections by staff. And so my question is, what is the process by which we deal with these elements which are not in the draft plan that we're approving? Do we have to present our recommendation with regard to those to the Common Council, or do we incorporate them by motion and amendment into the plan? That's my question on the point of order.
Thank you very much. I would understand those to be included in the motion, but they probably should be made specific. Megan, do you have anything to contribute to that?
I was actually going to offer either Angela or Dan the opportunity to speak to that in terms of the process, but yes, that was my understanding, Chair.
I guess historically, those motions have just made mention of the staff recommendations for those texts. So it's probably okay, but we always just like to double check and memorialize those changes.
Alderfield?
Yes, I would be happy for my motion to include staff's recommendations on the other points as described in the memo to the Plan Commission.
Okay. Thank you, Alderfield, and thank you, Alder Ugair, for pointing that out. Is there further discussion on this motion? Commissioner McCahill.
I think we need a second, which I will do.
Oh, okay. I thought we had a second. Alder Duncan seconded.
Okay. All right. Then I do have some discussion. Yeah. So thoughts on the Nakusa Trail extension, I guess, clearly there are folks that don't want it, and there's lots to consider. I have plenty of reasons to think it is good to include in the plan, and I think there's been a process issue here. So I don't feel like we have enough information to just leave it out of the plan, and in which case it is essentially never considered again. I think there's language in the comp plan about network neighborhood interconnectivity that this is meant to address. We've talked, at Transportation Commission about having streets that front parks. I think there's a similar recommendation in the West Area Plan about including a connection alongside a park. And yeah, I could go on. I think there's plenty of things to consider here before making that decision. So I would not be in favor of removing it from the plan altogether at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. Related to that, I was thinking there's a similar situation on the West Side Area Plan with Middleton Street, if I recall, and the language was adjusted on that to preserve the opportunity for connection, as in we're keeping the right of way. And I'm wondering, I don't know if anyone else would be interested in that language, but to kind of keep it on the table for the future, as Commissioner McCahill offered, not necessarily including it now, but I think it may make sense in the future, particularly if that intersection gets worse.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sanders, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to express my agreement with the concerns raised by Commissioner McCahill and Commissioner Solheim. I agree that I want to kind of maintain the opportunity for consideration in the future without removing the opportunity wholesale.
Thank you. Given that discussion, I don't see that there's a way that we can simply have an amendment to the motion to include Commissioner Solheim's idea. So I think we have to vote on the motion as it exists. And if it fails, then the alternative could be proposed. Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote. All those in favor, well, let's do a roll call since obviously there are disagreements. So could we have a roll call, Megan, please?
I apologize. Give me 1 second, Chair.
Okay.
I just need to pull up the membership list.
Okay, it looks like Commissioner Heck has something to add.
Yes, I just want to make sure we're explicit about what this particular vote is, what a yes means and what a no means. Thank you.
It's Alderfield's motion, which would adopt the Northeast Area Plan with staff recommended tweaks and amendments, along with removing the Nakusa connection. Did that correctly state what you're trying to say, Alderfield? Yes. Okay. That's what we'd be voting on. Okay. Okay. Megan?
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Bazin?
Do I get a vote today?
I believe so. I don't think we have a full quorum otherwise.
I think we do have a full quorum. So I think that you're right that Commissioner Bazin does not vote.
Okay, thank you. And I should have said at the beginning, thank you all for your patience, as this is my first meeting with all of you. So thank you, Chair. Okay, then we'll go to Commissioner Mendez.
No.
Okay. Commissioner McCahill?
No.
Alderfield?
Aye.
Alder Ugair?
Aye.
Alder Duncan?
Aye.
Commissioner Solheim?
No.
Commissioner Heck?
No.
All right. I have 4 noes and 3 ayes. And I believe that the commission needs 5 votes to pass a motion.
Correct. So motion fails. Do we have another motion? Commissioner Solheim.
I will move that the Plan Commission recommends adoption of the Northeast Area Plan, including the recommended changes from staff in the memo, with the one change being that the recommended Nakusa Trail Road extension recommendation be adjusted to the language allowing that the city would preserve the opportunity to connect and extend Nakusa Trail in the future.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Mendez. Is there discussion on this motion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to Alderfield.
Thank you, Chair. So I appreciate everyone considering my previous motion, as well as some of the adjustment to language to try to make a potential street extension more sensitive to the park. So I plan to support this motion because it is about the entire plan. And I think that the Northeast Area Plan is going to bring a lot of benefit and maps a lot of good things for this part of the city. So on net, yes, I plan to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. With that, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Agenda item 16, Legistar 84382, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan related to the Northeast Area Plan. Is there a motion? Commissioner Solheim.
I will move that the Plan Commission recommends adoption of the amendment to the comprehensive plan related to the Northeast Area Plan, inclusive of all changes made in the prior motion, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Ugair. Is there any discussion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Next is the West Area Plan. Agenda item 17 and 18, Legistar 84377, adopting the West Area Plan, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan and archiving underlying plans. And Legistar 84383, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan related to the West Area Plan. And I believe that first we're going to hear from Urvashi Martin. Urvashi?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Uh-huh.
Colin, you want to pull up the slides? Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. Urvashi Martin with the Planning Division. I'm also joined here with my colleagues from the Planning Division, worked on the West Area project. Brianna Collins and Colin Punt, and Colin and I will be giving a brief presentation tonight on the West Area Plan. Next slide. So what we'll be covering in today's presentation will give you a little bit of background about the West Area, talk a little bit about the planning process, give a high-level overview of some of the public feedback that we received during the process, share some of the highlights of the West Area Plan recommendations, and discuss some of the next steps in the review and approval process. Next slide. So just a little bit of background and refresher for the Commission. The West and the Northeast area plans were the first two area plans that were prepared since the adoption of the new planning framework. That's a new approach to city planning, and divides the city into these 12 distinct geographies. And these area plan boundaries will form as the basis for area planning moving forward. And these plans will be updated every decade to make sure that all areas in the city have a current plan in place. Next slide. So a little bit of background about the West Area. It is bounded by, the planning area is bounded by Midvale Boulevard on the east, the Beltline Highway on the west and south, City of Middleton, Lake Mendota, and Village of Shorewood Hills form the northern boundaries of the planning area. The West Area has approximately 33,000 residents. In terms of racial and ethnic composition, the West Area is very similar to the rest of the city, but there's slightly higher proportion of white and Asian residents. Next slide, please. This slide outlines the planning process and the various phases that were involved in this planning process. Like the Northeast Area Plan, this planning process started last year in January, and we are currently in the 6th and final phase of the planning process and currently going through the review and potential adoption of this plan. Next slide, please. Like the Northeast Area Plan, the West Area also had several underlining plans in place. There were 6 underlining plans within the West Area. As part of this planning process, we reviewed these underlining plans and incorporated the recommendations from those plans that are relevant and consistent with current city policies and priorities. And as Dan mentioned, that like the Northeast Area Plan, we also have a resolution within the resolution for the adoption of this plan language for archiving these underlining plans. Some of these underlining plans, their boundaries extend outside the West Area Plan boundaries. Only the portions that fall within the planning boundaries will be the portions of the plan that will be archived through this process. Next slide, please. So as part of this planning process, we did various kinds of outreach. We had several in-person and virtual community meetings. We also had some large public open houses with multiple city agencies. We did some surveys, and we also hired community partners to help us engage and reach some of the underrepresented members of the community. Next slide, please. So just to summarize some of the public engagement that was done during this process, in total, we had approximately 25 public meetings that included virtual and in-person public meetings, open houses, question and answer sessions, various boards, committee and commission meetings. The community meetings consisted of both virtual and in-person meetings. We also did a interactive map exercise, commenting map exercise. We also did a community survey and business survey. We also worked with UW-Madison's People Program class on urban planning that partners with Bell Phillips Memorial High School students. We also worked with the Youth Action Program at Lucier Community Education Center. And like I mentioned previously, we hired community partners to help us reach some of the underrepresented members of the community. So overall, some of the feedback themes that emerged from the public engagement, a lot of focus on tree canopy and conservation. There was some concerns about the development process and mistrust in the process. There was some feedback on improving the connectivity of the bike infrastructure and bike network. There were also some differing views on housing density. There were some people who wanted to preserve single-family neighborhoods versus others who wanted to add more housing density. There was also some feedback on locating housing closer to commercial uses and having more stores and services nearby. There was also some desire to see more diverse building types with varying sizes and scales. Sometimes some exclusive views were loudest, and there were also some feedback on welcoming new people while respecting established residents. In terms of the draft plan format, the plan was structured around the 7 elements of the comprehensive plan. So like the Northeast Area Plan, the plan has a chapter for each of those 7 elements. One exception from the Northeast Area Plan is that there's no chapter on a community action strategy, as the West Area Plan does not have a higher proportion of low and moderate income population that qualifies it to receive federal funding through the CDBG program. Other than that, the chapter contents are very similar to that of the Northeast Area Plan. We follow the general outline within the chapters of including what we heard, the actions led by the city, and some of the partnerships. In terms of land use, the plan uses the comprehensive plan as a guiding document and use the framework and the vision of the comprehensive plan's generalized future land uses to make the future land use recommendations. The land use categories are consistent with what was used in the comprehensive plan's generalized future land use map. Majority of the changes that have been recommended with the future land uses compared to what was recommended in the comprehensive plan was along areas adjacent to major transit corridors. For example, the areas around the Research Park area, we shifted some of the employment designations to mixed-use categories to allow for more mixed-use developments adjacent to the bus rapid transit corridor. Just to highlight some of the changes that are being recommended in the future land use map from what was recommended in the February draft. Area A, which is the northwest quadrant of Regent and Whitney Way, kind of the western portion, we are recommending changing that from neighborhood mixed use to low residential, which was the same recommendation in the comprehensive plan. Area B, which is the Hill Farms community pool site that was recommended previously for medium residential. We're changing that to low residential. Area C, which is kind of to the south, kind of east of Seago Road, previously was recommended for low medium residential. We are changing that to low residential, similar to what was recommended in the comprehensive plan. Area D, which is at the intersection of Seago and Mineral Point Road, the Covenant Presbyterian Church site, we are recommending changing that from medium residential to neighborhood mixed use to allow for some more non-residential uses. Area E, which is kind of east of that location, kind of north of Mineral Point Road. We are recommending changing that from medium residential to low medium residential to kind of be more reflective of what is on ground today. For proactive rezoning, there are 3 areas that are being recommended for considered for proactive rezoning. Area A, which is the triangle bounded by University Avenue, Whitney Way, and Old Middleton Road. We are recommending changing the zoning district from NMX, neighborhood mixed use, to RMX, regional mixed use. Area B, which is the Red Cross site, kind of north of Sheboygan Avenue. We are recommending changing the zoning district from SE to RMX. Area C, which is kind of along the Beltline, we are recommending changing the zoning district from CCT to CC. There were also a couple more recommendations for proactive rezoning that were included in the previous draft of the plan, which are circled on the map. These 2 recommendations have been removed from the draft plan, and these are the Highlands and the Regent and Whitney Way area. For streets, the plan recommends a planned street network. Most of those planned street connections are recommendations that have been carried forward from previous adopted plans, especially the Odana area plan, which was adopted not too long ago in 2021. Those street connections are shown on the map, kind of generally the area south of Mineral Point Road. Some of those planned street connections have also been officially mapped, and these streets are shown with the blue lines on the map. There are a couple of changes to highlight here. One is the Beltline crossing, which is shown here. This is a recommendation that was carried forward from the Odana area plan. We are recommending shifting the Beltline crossing to the east. This is in response to the Beltline study that WSDOT is currently undertaking. They're evaluating various Beltline crossings and feel that the crossing east of this location would be a much more implementable and feasible option, which is why we are recommending this shift. Another area to highlight is the planned street network that is shown north of Renobon Park. This is a recommendation that was made in the University Hill Farms neighborhood plan. We are carrying forward that recommendation from that plan. We have made slight modification to the alignment of the street connection and curved the street so it connects intersects with Sheboygan Avenue before it connects with Seagull Road, as otherwise it would require the city to acquire a parcel there, and just trying to avoid that situation. So this is the Beltline crossing that I mentioned in the previous slide. The solid blue line shown on the map here is what was recommended in the Odana area plan that runs from Tokay Boulevard and then underneath the Beltline, going through the federal site and then continuing further west. I'm sorry. We are recommending shifting that Beltline crossing to further east, and the dotted blue line is the location for that. As I mentioned, this is in response to the Beltline study that WSDOT is currently undertaking, and feels that the crossing at that location, which would be a much more feasible and implementable option, would be more north-south, going through Kessel Court and then connecting to Schrader Road. The Transportation Commission did recommend in favor of this shift. This is a detailed zoom in of the planned street connection north of Renobon Park. Again, this was a recommendation that was made in the University Hill Farms neighborhood plan that we are carrying forward. Again, want to mention that this street connection would only occur if the properties to the north were to redevelop. Currently, those properties are very successful and well leased, so there are no current plans for that, and this is would be a long-term consideration. Another thing to highlight here is the reconfiguration of the Seago Road and the Berwyn Drive intersection. With this reconfiguration, a portion of Laub Lane will be taken out. The reason for recommending this reconfiguration of this intersection is that this would help really improve the safety of this intersection, as would help reduce the speed and would really improve this connection. In terms of paths and bike network, the biggest change that was made in the draft plan was the removal of the north-south Saw Creek Greenway path in response to the comments that were received. In place of that, we're recommending a side path along High Point Road and a buffered bike lanes on Westfield. Both of those options would require reduction of on-street parking on both the streets. We did retain the east-west path across the Saw Creek Greenway, as the Transportation Commission had emphasized that that path, any design or further discussion of the location would occur as part of the study that engineering would undertake. For pedestrians, there are not really any changes to the map. The map just highlights some of the sidewalk gaps, areas that have no sidewalk or sidewalks on just one side of the street. We did highlight some of the priority sidewalk additions, which are shown with the green lines on the map, and these are sidewalks that connect to Crestwood and Stephens Elementary Schools. With that, I'll turn it over to Colin to cover the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Urvashi. Next is the neighborhoods and housing chapter. We won't read through all of these. The next few chapters are very policy heavy, but we did hear a lot about encouraging a wider mix of both unit sizes, building sizes, often related to the concept of the missing middle, encouraging and promoting access to programs that are supporting home buyers, renters, owners, working with funding partners through the Affordable Housing Fund, Housing Forward, and other programs to distribute that housing through the area, and then also taking a close look at residential development that occurs along the West Beltline Highway, and including noise mitigation improvements in those buildings. For economy and opportunity, we looked at a number of different actions there as well. Land banking, reassessment of our tax increment districts for affordable housing, business incubation, considering using those TIDs for other programs to help businesses within the TIDs. Potentially considering a new TID for the Mineral Point Road corridor. And then one of the big things that we heard a lot was about the need for childcare. So looking for affordable childcare options in some of that existing commercial space, which there is a lot of in the West area. For culture and character, there are 2 urban design districts within the West area. The original recommendation in the plan was to review UDD 3, which is down by Whitney Way and Odana, to determine whether it should be revised or repealed. The UDC recommended that the option that it could also be expanded to include more of the development along Odana Road toward Westtown. And then with UDD 6, reviewing that as part of the citywide UDC review to revise its boundaries, to drop some of the single family and small residential development from the district boundary and include some of the larger residential developments along Sheboygan Avenue and Seago. potentially split UDD 6 into sub areas, which I believe was also a recommendation in the Northeast Area Plan. Consider additional minimum and maximum building heights and building design standards, all of which really bring the UDD into alignment with the regulations in the Transit-Oriented Development Overlay Zoning District, and align all of those more closely. Staff also did a historical scan with the assistance of the city's preservation planner. We identified several individual properties that could be listed on the National Register. There are also some potentials for National Register landmarks, for additional National Registered areas, and a few other properties of historic interest, which are all identified in the plan. We, like the Northeast Area Plan team, worked very closely with our colleagues in the Parks Division to identify some plan recommendations for the parks. This is an area that is well served by parks, and the Parks Division did a lot of public outreach as part of this. There are in the plan park-specific actions for many of the community parks. As we showed in the previous image, a plan for expanding Rennebohm Park both to the north and to the southeast. We also discuss improving lake access to Lake Mendota in and around Lake Mendota Drive. Recommendations for some new park areas, one southwest of University Avenue, as well as potential new park areas in the Odana Road University Research Park area. And then always looking for new opportunities to install some bicycle facilities as well in areas that can use them. Lastly, we have been to a number of boards, committees, and commissions. We, like Urvashi mentioned, we did not go to the CDBG committee, but we have been to all the same commissions that the Northeast Area Plan has been to. The motions and recommendations and any changes to the plan as recommended by the boards, commissions, and commissions shown here are in the staff memo. And then pending a recommendation here, our plan is to continue on to Common Council on September 10. And as always, Urvashi and I and the rest of the team will be happy to answer questions after the public hearing.
Thank you, Colin and Urvashi. We do have some registrants. I will open the public hearing. The first registrant is Jane Meyer, Randolph Drive, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Jane, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much and good evening. I'm here tonight to ask you and to give you a few reasons to remove the east-west bike path from the Sauk Creek Greenway. I'm not opposed to the whole west area plan, but this portion of it. I'm also asking you to take the opportunity to correct an error made at the Parks Commission by taking the bike path out of the Greenway. Because they made a mistake by saying that the path would not go through the park at Walnut Grove, only up to it when indeed, or adjacent to it, when indeed it does go onto park lands. There are 2 key points here. People on this commission, I know, have spent their careers defending and protected historic properties. And the other one is that the mayor has serious money problems. This is a historic decision. We need bike paths, but we need to be smart about it because of climate change and stormwater control. The Ho-Chunk people use this land near the Pheasant Branch Creek and in our area as a place of light and building for the future. It was sacred land, historic land. Let's make this a historic legacy here and lean towards saving the environment rather than building unneeded bike paths. It's difficult. It's unpopular perhaps but it's the right thing to do. So that 50 years from now, when people see that the trees are still here, people will point to our choice to honor the indigenous people and save the trees in the creek. We also will have, given the growing trend of bicycle alternative transportation, by improving the already built bike lanes around our area, that in 50 years will still be here. We will leave a legacy of finding ways to maximize our resources, to keep trees as carbon removers and enhance bike use as carbon prevention. Historic. And at the same time, we'll find a way to do this with pennies and not millions. Ben Zellers told us that the bike paths are just lines on a piece of paper, but they really are a map for our future and our failure to accept this historic opportunity to find balance of carbon removal and carbon prevention. Just as we look at the maps of the Ho-Chunk lands, we'll leave a map of possibility that is not limited by lines on historic page. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Our next registrant is Gwen Long, Sauk Creek Drive, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Gwen, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm representing Friends of Sauk Creek, a large grassroots environmental group of over 500 City of Madison residents who request that you remove all asphalt lighted paths that would require the removal of additional climate controlling trees from the West Area Plan. Public input has been overwhelmingly opposed to those paths, yet we feel we have not been heard. We feel camaraderie with the Sycamore Park community in the city's area planning process and the lack of transparency we have received. We really need to know why the Bike Federation has so much sway in City Hall over the local community who is opposed to these paths and who are most affected by this project. We truly appreciate local citizen involvement in this planning process, and we have done everything the community representation requested of its citizens. We have been part of the city engagement process by the city. The Friends of Sauk Creek have sent emails to city officials and board members, hundreds of community letters, evidence-based white papers. We've shown up in person and enforced at every West Area Planning meeting held since April of 2023. We have circulated a petition signed by over 200 people, and we still are not sure that many of the city officials have actually heard us. We appreciate that our alder, Nikki Conklin, removed the north-south path plan, and we expect that the north-south asphalt bike path through the heavily wooded area will not reappear in the final West Area Plan. But then out of nowhere, in April of 2024, and without community support, an isolated east-west path through a steep ravine was added to the West Area Plan without solid reasoning behind it. City officials don't seem to truly appreciate the significant challenges that a bridge and trail through a stormwater drainage waterway and ravine that is prone to overflowing in even light rains would cause. They do not live near Sauk Creek or use the multiple current trails that are there to hike through the serene, shaded, wooded area full of wildlife. Or to walk
1 minute remaining, Gwen.
And play with their children. Even bikers currently use these trails. We are very concerned about the significant loss of animals, bats, insect habitat. No bike path coming out of Sauk Creek Greenwell will connect to any bike network because of the link at Old Sauk and the Beltline is indefinitely on hold due to multiple concerns by the DOT. So any bike path through Sauk Creek Greenway is actually, as an avid bike leader called it, a novelty, a path to nowhere, which flies in the face of the city's complete Green Streets guides. That transportation efforts are to provide sustainability destinations to work, school, and shopping. This path does not fulfill that guide. The nearby quiet streets and current safe
Thank you, Gwen. That concludes your available time. Our next registrant is Jenny Iskander, St. Lawrence Circle, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Jenny, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. We have lived in Sauk Creek for 25 years. Our kids have fond memories of exploring the Greenway. winter hikes looking for animal tracks, texture walks looking for signs of spring, and scurrying along downed trees in the summer to get across the creek. These are valuable experiences for all children that will be lost if this urban forest is destroyed for an unneeded bike path. Madison's Nature Everywhere campaign, announced by the mayor in March, is designed to increase equitable access to nature everywhere children live, learn, and play. The Saw Creek Greenway is the last natural space in the 9th District. It should be preserved and highlighted by the city to provide children with access to an unmanicured space to explore. We also taught our children to bike in this neighborhood, which could be viewed as a model neighborhood for learning how to bike. They start on cul-de-sacs, then transition into sidewalks and calm side streets, then move on to wide, comfortable streets with painted bike lanes where they learn to watch for cars backing out of driveways, to cross larger streets, initially walking their bikes, and then to maneuver around parked cars. It is important to note that all streets surrounding the Greenway are currently classified as low stress by the city. And the West Area Plan includes additional bike infrastructure for High Point, Westfield, and Tree Lane. There are many safe bike options for inexperienced bikers in the district. But what children can't do on the streets surrounding the Greenway is play in an urban forest. In order to make a reasoned,
You have 1 minute
in
remaining.
order to make a reasoned and well-supported decision, city staff must engage with those directly affected by a decision. Throughout this process, staff arguments have focused on general comments and a few random anecdotes, but they have never provided a compelling for the greater good of the city argument. That's because there isn't one. This is a micro neighborhood issue with a huge monetary and environmental price tag. It does not belong in the West Area Plan. Please instruct the Common Council to remove the east-west Greenway path from the West Area Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Paul Latta of West Skyline Drive, Madison, registered in support, available to answer questions. Megan, were there any late registrants?
Yes, Chair, there were 3.
Okay.
The first one was Craig Weinold of 1235 Dartmouth Road, who registered in support and wanted to speak.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Craig, I think you might still be on mute on your end.
Craig, you should see a prompt to unmute yourself, maybe behind a window on your screen if you're using a computer. You are unmuted on your end. Or you are muted. I'm sorry, you are muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. And I apologize for the background noise. The Saw Creek Greenway, you've heard a little bit about. The West Area Plan has 2 paths mentioned. One is the north-south path. It runs the length of the Greenway. That's been canceled. That's been removed from the West Area Plan as of 3 months ago, as all other commenters know. There's also an east-west path still in the plan. In the public comments for this meeting, I apologize. I did not intend to speak at this meeting, but there was a public comment from Susan Brugman. I think it's on page 12 of today's comments, where she quotes me. And sorry, I'm going to have a hard time reading this. In January, a prominent biker, Craig Weinhold, that's me, told the city that others will not use the east-west path, and so on and so on. That is a lie, if you can still hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead. Now we can't. Go ahead.
Craig, you are still unmuted in both the Zoom and on both sides. You may have muted your headset, but we cannot hear you. Craig, are you?
Craig, you need to unmute yourself.
If you have a microphone or a headset that has a mute button, I would look for that.
Okay, I think we need to move on to our next registrant. Craig, perhaps you could sign out and back in again. That might reset it.
Okay, Chair. The next registrant is George Meyer at 201 Randolph Drive, who registered in opposition and wanted to speak.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Chair, there's no person in attendance by that name.
Okay, and then the last person, Megan?
It looks like, apologies, George Meyer signed up twice. But if he is not here, then that looks like the end of the list.
Okay. Did Mr. Weinhold try signing in again?
He has not left, but there is a person that raised their hand, which is might be. We'll check and see if this is George. It's not by the name and registration. Is this George?
Yes, it is.
Okay, go ahead, George. You have 3 minutes.
Well, let me just start. I wasn't going to say anything like this, but I really disagree with Mr. Meinhold. I've seen an email from him to Joe from the engineering department that said that. I've seen that email in January 24. I didn't want to go down this path, but I didn't want to see when my neighbors called a liar. Moving on, though, in terms of the east-west bike path, my concern is this, and I'd experienced a DNR about trying to build switchbacks in natural areas. And there's a 40-foot grade difference between Walnut Grove Park and the grade of Sauk Creek Greenway. That's going to take a very extensive set of switchbacks for any size width of bike path, and it's going to result in scores, if not more than scores, of trees having to be cut down, and really a lot of work to prevent erosion. Moving on to what I was going to talk about, I do support the recommendation of Alder Conklin and the Transportation Department to remove the north-south bike path through the Greenway. The staff had put together 2 safe alternatives for north-south bike paths between Old Sauk and Tree Lane. High Point Road has not had a bike accident since the record starting in 2001. And there's not an bike accident. And the staff has recommended even more additional bike safety measures, which our neighborhood appreciates. Also on the other side is Westfield Road. There's only been
Minute left, George.
only one accident on Westfield. And that was about 7 years ago, where an adult bicyclist came off the sidewalk on Colony Drive. He was looking over his shoulder to the biker behind him and literally ran into a car driving legally on the street. My deck is at the corner of Randolph and Tree Lane, where the bike lane where the path starts into the Greenway. It's a steep hill from Mineral Point. Rarely does a bicyclist come down that hill and stop at our stop sign. And I know cars do the same.
Thank you, George. That concludes your available time. I think that is all of our speakers, but I'll look.
Chair, was it Craig has returned, left hand returned. So if you want to try.
Okay, let's try Craig one more time. Craig, you have 2 minutes approximately.
1:30. I so apologize. It's hot out there, and my sweaty hands do not work with a phone from this weather. But I'm in the air conditioning now, and I mentioned I did not want to make any comments at this meeting, but I was forced to. You can see in the public comments submitted today, there's a letter from Susan Brugman signed by 43 neighbors that quotes, "In January, a prominent biker, Craig Weinhold," that's me, "told the city that bikers will not use the east-west path because it is inconvenient and they prefer street bike lanes around the Greenway." Those are her words, and they are a lie. I would like to call them just a misunderstanding or misinformation, but I can't. Luckily, she included my actual words. You can scroll down and see my email that she was quoting. And in them, I encouraged the city to, quote, "stress the need for east-west connectivity through the Greenway. Today, the east and west sides of the Greenway may as well be on different planets." Those are my words, and those are the truth. And to quote them any other way is misinformation. I very much support an east-west path. The current situation means children living on the west have to travel an extra half mile to reach school. It means buses are sent to pick up kids who could walk. It means that there's only one gap in a low-stress east-west route, the only one between busy Old Sauk and Mineral Point Road. There's an east-west route that would go right through here. It's a gap. This is a transportation issue. It should have been settled last month. But the group that Ms. Brugman represents will continue their campaign tonight, as you've heard, and again in the future. Her group will say anything, even lie. And I hate to say that, but it's happened multiple times. The leaders of our group are impassioned, but they've lost their moral compass and the ability to engage in good faith discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our registrants. Are there questions of any of our registrants? Seeing no okay, Alder Ugair.
Yes, I have a question for Gwen Long, please.
I'm here.
Gwen, just want to ask you a question. I'm going to ask staff again later, so I want to get your take on this. After the last round of comments by residents on the plan, including the inclusion of the east-west path, staff recommended the following change, which is in the latest version with regard to that. They wrote, "Any all ages and abilities path should be designed using environmentally sensitive best practices and minimizing impacts to trees and other vegetation, wildlife habitat, and adjacent properties." And I was just wondering if you could quick comment on why the Friends of Saw Creek don't find that an adequate compromise.
We have seen what happened at Heinstead Park on the far east side. That's through a conservancy park where they are putting in a bike path. And somebody did post the consequences of that tree removal. They basically came in clean cut through a conservancy park on the east side. This greenway is not even parkland, but it will connect up to Walnut Grove Park. And so we are very concerned that the city has a history of not doing a great job of saving trees in these programs in the past, as we have seen in phase 1 and phase 2 of the Saw Creek restoration. So we are very concerned that the city will say one thing, and then when we see the project completed, it is totally different and a lot more trees are gone. And that's it. We have a history of it. We can show you pictures throughout Madison where this has occurred, as recently as the Heinstead Park on the far east side, where they are putting in a bike path and decimated that woods.
Thank you, Gwen.
Any further questions of any of our registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I'll close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Alder Ugair.
Yes, I'll just carry on with a continuation of the question I just had for Gwen. I'd like staff's interpretation of the wording that's been added with regard to any all ages and abilities path that's put in as the east-west path, that it should be used environmentally sensitive best practices, et cetera, et cetera. How do you see that being implemented as stormwater engineering and transportation are looking at that?
Colin and Urvashi, I don't know. I can probably take that one. So I'm Renee Calloway. I'm the assistant director for traffic engineering, and I have been working with engineering kind of on their stormwater project. And I think the direction from the Transportation Commission was pretty clear that we should look at all of the different options within the Greenway. I don't think there's just one way we could build this. We, engineering, when I say we, really would do the detailed work, looking at the various alignments, the slopes, what would be the impacts of the different ones. And so I think if this project moved forward in the future, potentially we would even look at it through the Greenway Stormwater Project, like what would be the impacts for different alignments. If there was a successful alignment, it would come back to the Transportation Commission to review to make sure that it met kind of their guidelines that they put forth. And potentially there might be more than one option for how to build a connection like that. So those various options would come back to the Transportation Commission to review, to make sure that whatever staff would be recommending met the guidelines that were given. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. Question for the planning team on University Research Park. I just want to make sure I understand that in the land use map correctly. I'm seeing the cross hatching where it says employment or residential only mixed use area. Is that mixed use in the sense that it can be employment or residential only, or I guess I'm confused on the residential only mixed use area.
Colin?
Yes. So it would be an area that if it is mixed use, it can be either residential or employment or a mix of the two, but not other uses. Kind of like a general commercial would be excluded from that area.
So it could be a mixed use building with residential and anything that is considered employment in the same building?
Yes. Or you could have an entire building of residential or an entire building of employment, but then it would not be the a commercial use or something like that.
Okay.
Like a retail restaurant, those things.
A single story retail restaurant or something. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Any further questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, I'm looking for a motion, and it would be on agenda item 17, Legistar 84377, adopting the West Area Plan, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan, and archiving underlying plans. Commissioner Solheim.
I move that the Plan Commission recommends adoption of the West Area Plan, adopting an amendment to the comp plan and archiving underlying plans, including the suggestions by staff in the memo.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Ugair. Commissioner Solheim, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, I move to retain the east-west connection. Just looking at that area, I think it is very important for access for residents to be able to get to that park and get to the other side of the greenway. There are very few. You have to go far north to Sauk or to Tree Lane or Mineral Point. And it just seems like a very natural connection, particularly for those that need to utilize an all abilities path and not just walk through the woods.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there other comments or discussion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. And I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to both teams on the Northeast Area Plan and the West Area Plan. It was a challenging operation effort, and since particularly it was the first two plans that were developed, I know that we had a lot of hardworking staff, and not just in planning, but in other areas of the city too. So thanks to everybody who worked on these. Okay, next, is there any business by members? Yes, Megan. You're muted.
We still need to take action on item number 18.
Oh. Sorry, thank you very much. Yes, we do. Legistar 84383, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan related to the West Area Plan. Commissioner Solheim.
I will move adoption of the amendment to the comp plan related to the West Area Plan.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Mendez. Commissioner Solheim, did you wish to speak to your motion? No. Any, Colin?
Yeah, can I just clarify on the motion that it is similar to the two motions from the Northeast Area Plan, that the recommended changes from the staff memo are included in that as well?
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Colin. Anything else? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. And now we will move on to, is there any business by members? Seeing no raised hands, we'll go to the Secretary's report. Megan.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go through the long list of items here in detail. I know that you all have these in your agenda. Did just want to note that there were several actions taken by the Common Council at their August 6th meeting related to several specific plan implementations and plan amendments and rezonings that you've seen in recent meetings, as well as a zoning text amendment to prohibit surface parking in the downtown core. All of those things were approved by the Common Council. At your next meeting on September 9th, we are currently anticipating 9 items, which you can see listed here, several conditional use permits. We will be seeing a rezoning and preliminary and final plat for the creation of 2 residential lots in the Huxley Yards subdivision. We will also see a rezoning from a temporary zoning district to a permanent zoning district, along with a conditional use on Portage Road for the construction of an apartment building containing 65 units. And then we will also see a conditional use application for a 120,000 square foot addition to the UW Health East Madison Hospital. Based on your referral tonight of 2001 Londonderry Drive, you will also see the addition of those two items, both a demo permit and a conditional use for a 4-story 105 unit apartment that was taken off tonight's agenda. There are a number of items on your September 23rd agenda. I won't go through those in detail, but I will note that we are currently anticipating that there may be 2 other items on your agenda for that evening. One is a request to discuss the pending budget discussions with the commission, particularly as it relates to the work that's within your purview and the planning division's purview. As well as a potential presentation by our colleagues in transportation related to the Transportation Demand Management Ordinance and some anticipated updates to that ordinance that they've been working on.
Very good. I'm glad to hear that the TDM will be presented and shared with the Plan Commission, so thank you. And with that, I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Alderfield, seconded by Commissioner Solheim, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, we're adjourned, and I will see you September 9th. Thank you, everybody.